Hi, I'm Katie, welcome to Tic Talk. Today our topic is tics and transition. We're getting very close to September now and the new school year, and lots of families will have started to think about transition. Now that might be the transition between primary school and secondary school, or you might be thinking simply about transition between teachers. And my work at the moment involves supporting young people with that transition. So today I'm going to share my top tips to help you support your children to manage this upcoming change. Firstly, transitional anxiety is totally normal. There is a lot for young people to think about, but when a young person is experiencing tics, their anxieties might stray from finding rooms and making new friends, and include worries about feeling different, being picked on, or having to answer difficult questions about their tics. And sometimes our young people are going to be completely unfazed by transition, and instead it's going to be the teachers and the parents that have that anxiety. And that's normal too. We all want our young people to be happy and to succeed. So what can we do in terms of supporting transition? Well, my top tip number one is to normalise the issue. Do the maths. So 1 in 100 children will have a diagnosis of Tourette's syndrome. Well, if we look at the average secondary school and think of a large secondary school having perhaps 1,000 children, that means that about 10 of those young people are going to have a diagnosis of Tourette's syndrome. But if we think a bit wider, according to NHS figures, about 5% of young people have tics. So again, in that average secondary school, let's say 1,000 children, at least 50 of them will either have or will have experienced tics at some point during their childhood. So your young people are not alone. Tics are really, really common. Top tip number two, make a plan. When I speak to my young people about transitions, the most common thing that I hear them say is, what if? What if I can't find a classroom? What if I forget my PE kit? What if nobody wants to be friends with me? And the way I deal with this is using something called a what if board. Essentially, we mind map all of the worst case scenarios, all of the things that could possibly go wrong during transition, and then we make a plan for each one. You can't control what other people think about you, but you can control your own reaction. And that's what I say to my children and my pupils. And what I want them to do is create a plan that they can manage in their setting. And what I then advise them to do is to take that plan, take their what if board and stick it in their planner or put it in their bag. And that way, if they experience a situation they don't know how to deal with when they start their new school or with their new teacher, they can look back at that plan and they can feel more in control of what's happening. They might also like to edit that plan as the year goes on. So for example, if you start your secondary school and you find out your form tutor is called Mrs. Mulligan, you might put her name specifically on the plan, or you might put particular people, particular places specifically on your plan once you find out what those are. Top tip number three, share information that will help. Now it might be as simple as making a what if board and sharing that. But you can't control what other people are going to think about your children. What you can do is you can give them the information that they need in order to better support your children. So what I would do is I would consider making a leaflet to share with the school. And this is good practice for any transition, and teachers are usually very receptive to families that are proactive. I have shared a format for doing this, which is available alongside this blog. And I've made dozens of these over the last few years, probably closer to hundreds, and they have a really big impact because they come from the child's own perspective. Your children have a voice, and I think we need to support them to use it. Top tip number four, use perspective. There will be more that's the same about your child's new school than there is that's different, and I would look at mind mapping some of these things to relieve anxiety. In terms of difference, well, they might have lots of teachers, they might be getting the bus for the first time, they might have new subjects. But in terms of things being the same, they're still going to have lunch break every day, they'll still have a form tutor, there will still be clubs available to them, they will still wear a uniform, they'll still have friends. The times of the school day will be, if not the same, very similar. They'll still have weekends every week. If there's an overwhelming worry that comes out of some of those conversations, you can make a specific plan for that. And again, I've got a format for this which I've shared. And what I encourage children to do is take that worry and break it down slightly. The first thing I get them to think about is what can they do about it now? What are the proactive steps they can take to do something before they start their new school? And then the second step is, what can you do about it once you've started school? So if your worry is something like making new friends, well, what you can do about it now is identify which people from your current school are moving to your new school. Can you have some of their phone numbers? Is there a way to meet with them in the holidays so that you can feel comfortable with them on the first day of term? And when you get to your new school, you could go to a club, or you could speak to a teacher if you really feel like you can't find somebody to talk to. What this process does is it helps parents to avoid that cycle of discussion that happens with anxiety, and often children get stuck in a very repetitive cycle of rehearsing the worry. Having a really concrete plan like this helps us to break away from that cycle of worry and instead focus on the practical and think about what can we actively do about it. And then my final tip is to remember that there's lots of support available to you as parents and teachers, but also for your children. There's lots more advice on the Tourettes Action website, and don't forget that you can call the helpline or use the email link if you need support or advice. That's it for today. Good luck with transition.